occurred relating to student Sometimes the changes that have occurred relating to student debt over the last couple of years can be confusing to keep up with. So we are delighted to have Ashley share her expertise today. Moreover, I want to assure you that the changes made to student debt policy are real and have benefited real people. I know colleagues and friends who have benefited from public service loan forgiveness and seen as much as $30,000 in remaining college debt refunded. In other cases, people who have registered for SAVE have seen their monthly payments drop by half. This is real money in people's pocket that gives them the chance to build households, support their families, and increase social mobility in the meaningful way that all of us aspire to support. We are so grateful for this chance to learn more about how we can help people access these benefits. We have a lot to cover, but before we jump in, a few housekeeping items. This session will be recorded and sent to the email used to register for the webinar. We encourage you to keep questions and comments in the Q&A box, which should be about the center of your Zoom screen, as we want to keep the chat function clear for official links to information. If you missed the first webinar we hosted in September 2022, please visit the Kresge YouTube page and search for Ensuring a Promise Made is a Promise Kept. With that, I'm turning things over to Ashley Harrington. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill, and thank you everyone at Kresge for putting this together and being such great partners on all of this work. I'm very excited to be here and share this information with folks. I think it hopefully will be personally helpful to a lot of you here, but also helpful to the communities and folks that you serve and work with. So I am going to go ahead and jump right in. We can go to the next slide. So I always like to start off with like the really positive, the good news. I love to share that under the Biden-Harris administration, we have approved over $136 billion in student loan forgiveness for more than 3.7 million borrowers. That's more than any administration ever. And we've done this through improvements to programs like public service loan forgiveness, by fixing the income-driven repayment program, by fixing the total permanent disability discharge program, by ensuring that colleges are held accountable. And so that includes $45.7 billion for 939,000 borrowers who have been in repayment for 20 to 25 or even more years through fixes through income-driven repayment. And of course, $56.7 billion for 793,000 public servants through fixes through the public service loan forgiveness program. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. So I wanted to start off briefly, just a landscape level set, making sure everyone here, I'm sure, is aware that from March 20th to April 2023, federal student loan payments were paused. Interest was set to zero because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so payments have now resumed. Interest resumed in September 2023. And first payments were due in October. And so now we have been a couple months into repayment, and borrowers can get credit for all of that time during the payment pause towards public service loan forgiveness and towards income-driven repayment, even though we did not have to make payments. Let's go to the next slide. This is the studentaid.gov dashboard. I often get questions from folks, where do I start? I don't even know where to begin. I don't know anything about my loans. And the first thing I tell them is log into studentaid.gov. Studentaid.gov is the best place to go for information about your loans, the best place to start. If you are a student loan borrower and you don't have a studentaid.gov passport or ID or account, go ahead and set that up so you can log in and you can see your dashboard. This is what the dashboard looks like. You can see your loans, you can see your service or any upcoming payments. It's the best place to go to start to get information about your loans and figure out next steps. Let's go to the next slide. Another overview, another piece of the dashboard, you can see your loan breakdown. It'll tell you which type of loans you have, the amount of them, the interest, the servicer. So all of that is available right there on that studentaid.gov dashboard. Next slide. It will give you checklists and things to do for next steps, things to think about. So again, if you have someone who doesn't know where to start at studentaid.gov, start at that dashboard. Let's go to the next slide. And then I get a lot of questions. Well, I've been told this, I've been told that. They said I don't have the right type of loans. And so just the basics, right? There are three main types of federal student loans. There's a direct loan program, which most folks have. That is the biggest loan program now. We moved to all direct loans in 2010, and these are loans that were made directly by the federal government and then are serviced by one of our servicer contractors, Mohila, AidVantage, Ed Financial, Nelnet. Then there are something called federal family education loans. These are FFEL loans. These are loans that were guaranteed by the federal government, but made by private entities like Sallie Mae, Wells Fargo, and others. Now, before 2010, this was the biggest loan program. There were more guaranteed loans than direct loans, but we stopped making these loans in 2010. And finally, a smaller program, but it's still around, is the Perkins Loan Program. These are loans that were made by institutions of higher education, but guaranteed by the federal government. We stopped making these in 2017, and this is a relatively small part of the portfolio, but there still are many folks who have Perkins loans. So those are the three main types of loans. And this is really important to know what type of loan you have and for borrowers to know what type of loans they have, because certain programs are only available for certain loans. For instance, public service loan forgiveness is only for direct loans. So folks who have FFEL or Perkins loans have to consolidate into the direct loan program to get access. And many of you may have seen all of this come to bear when we had the public service loan forgiveness waiver, where many folks who have been told for years they had the wrong loans or thought they had the right loans were able to consolidate into the direct loan program and still get credit for their underlying FFEL or Perkins loans. Those are three main types of federal student loans. Let's go to the next slide. There are also two main types of repayment plans. So when folks are asking, I don't know what plan to go to, I don't know how to think about this, there are two main types. There are plans that are based on the amount you borrowed. So these are fixed plans, and that's like the standard plan, the graduated repayment plan, the extended repayment plan. And then there are plans that are based on your income and family size. And these are called income-driven repayment plans. And there are 4 of those. And I'm really going to focus a little bit on those today. Let's go to the next slide. So income-driven repayment plans, again, there are 4. There's the Saving on a Valuable Education Plan. That is our newest repayment plan. It's the most affordable plan for most borrowers, especially low and middle income borrowers. We're going to talk about why in just a second. There's the Pay-As-You-Earn plan. There is the income-based repayment plan, and there's the income contingent repayment plan. These are all income-based repayment plans, plans that are based on where your monthly payment is based on your income and your family size. Let's go to the next slide. This is a matrix that shows all about these different plans, because different plans are available for different types of loans. There's different eligibility pieces. There's different repayment terms. I'm not going to go through all of this because we are going to share this with you after. Just want to let you know that this chart is in there as a resource for folks. Let's go to the next slide. So we're going to focus today on the Saving on a Valuable Education Plan. This is the newest plan that I just mentioned. It replaced the revised Pay-As-You-Earn plan. So if you've heard of Repay or you were on Repay, there's no more Repay. There's Save, the Saving on a Valuable Education Plan. So folks who were previously on Repay were automatically transferred to Save when we introduced this last summer. And again, Save is an IDR plan. It is a plan like Pay-As-You-Earn, like ICR, like IBR, where your monthly payment is based on your income and family size. But Save is more affordable for most folks in those other plans for a couple of reasons. Let's go to the next slide. Reason number 1 is it protects more income. So if you're on an income-based repayment plan, all of our plans protect some level of income, whether it's 100% of the federal poverty line, 150% of the federal poverty line, or now with Save 225% of the federal poverty line. And so that means income below that line is protected. We're not basing your monthly payment on that income. That income is for you to use on your needs for your family. And so under the Save plan, we protect more income for those basic needs. So at 225% of the poverty line, that means that a single borrower who makes $32,000 or less has a $0 payment. They will not be expected to pay anything under the Save plan. And those payments will still count, those $0 payments, towards their IDR forgiveness or their PSLF forgiveness. If you're a family of 4 making $67,500 or less, you also would qualify for a $0 payment. So more folks qualify for a $0 payment under Save than under the other plans because of this higher income protection. The other really big piece about Save that people get excited about is you no longer have to watch your balance grow and grow because of unpaid interest. If you've ever been on an income-based repayment plan, you know that because your payment is based on income, you can make your payments every single month, but still watch your balance grow because what you are paying is not even enough to cover your monthly interest. We've all been in that situation. And so under the Save plan, as long as you make your required monthly payment, whether it's $0, $10, or $100, whatever's left over in accrued monthly interest, we will take care of. The Department of Education will take care of it. So you no longer have to watch your balance grow and grow even as you make payments. Finally, there are a couple of other benefits. One big benefit that will be implemented later this month is something we call early forgiveness for low balance borrowers. So for folks who took out a lower balance, $12,000 or less, right, they can get forgiveness as early as 10 years instead of the 20 or 25 years that would normally be the case. And for every additional $1,000 borrowed, that goes up by 1 year. So if you borrow $13,000, you can get forgiveness at 11 years. If you borrow $15,000, you can get forgiveness at 13 years. This is to make sure that low original balance borrowers don't have to stay in repayment for forever, even on those low balances. And remember, this is about your original balance. It's not about what your balance is now. It could be much higher. It could be much lower, right? But as long as your original balance on your loans that are eligible for SAVE is lower than $12,000, you can be eligible for this early forgiveness or the 13 or the 15, right? So this is a huge benefit that we're going to implement later this month. And that means that number I told you about, that 3.7 million borrowers, is only going to go up because there are going to be so many borrowers who can also benefit from this. And finally, later this year, SAVE gets even better when we cut undergraduate payments in half. So stay tuned for that as well. Let's go to the next slide. This is an example of a typical borrower savings. So we have Alexander, who was previously on the repay plan. When he was automatically switched to SAVE, his payment went from $134 to $43, saving him about $90 a month, which is money that he can put back into his life expenses, his basic needs, and less money that has to be devoted to student loans so that he can then pursue the things that he hoped to pursue when he went into higher education. Let's go to the next slide. This is just a little bit more about that early forgiveness benefit that we talked about already. We go to the next slide. We've also made IDR easier to access in general. Remember, SAVE is an income-driven repayment plan. So to apply for SAVE, you go to studentaid.gov/IDR. That's the income-driven repayment application where you can apply for any of the income-based plans. We've made it easier. It takes about 10 minutes or less and we've now made it so that you can import your information directly from the IRS. You don't have to upload anything. You can go in and give consent to get it directly from the IRS. And then once you do that, every year it will update automatically. So you never have to worry about missing your recertification date because you have to recertify your income every year for income-based plans. So we made that easier than ever. Let's go to the next slide. And so when you do studentaid.gov IDR, when you do the application, it will go through and it will show you your different options under the IDR plans. We also have something called Loan Simulator, where you can go in, put in your information, simulate, I want to have the lowest payment, I want to borrow more, and it will help you walk through and see what the best repayment strategy is for you. And so you'll be able to see the different plans available to you, not just IDR plans, but some of those fixed plans we talked about. Under the IDR application, you will only see IDR plans. Under Loan Simulator, you will be able to see all the plans. So that's also a great resource to use. Keep in mind, Loan Simulator is not going to be exactly right because a lot of it is requiring you to put in estimates, estimating how much you make, how much your loan debt is, or something like that. So just be aware that's going to give you some good information, but it might not be exactly what you end up getting later on. Let's go to the next slide. So that's the Saving on a Valuable Education Plan. I now want to talk to you about the payment count adjustment, which is this time-limited program that can help a lot of folks get closer to forgiveness, and in fact has. Those 939,000 borrowers who've gotten forgiveness after 20 or 25 years is because of this fix, this payment count adjustment. And if you're familiar with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Limited Waiver that we did October 2022 to October 2023, no, October 2021 through October 2022. A lot of that is similar to what we're doing in the payment count adjustment, but it is another opportunity for people who still have FFEL or Perkins loans to get into the direct loan program and still get credit for their underlying loans. So we announced this in April of 2022. We plan to fully implement it by July of this year. And under this one-time revision, it's going to do one time, we're addressing past inaccuracies in how we were counting payments for IDR and PSLF. We're addressing forbearance steering and deferments where borrowers could have been on a low dollar IDR plan or even a $0 plan, but they were steered into forbearances by their servicers. Borrowers may also receive credit for periods of repayment, forbearance, and deferment that normally don't qualify for IDR or PSLF. And this is for all borrowers with EdHelp loans, which is loans that were on the payment pause. That includes borrowers in default and Parent Plus borrowers. So all borrowers with EdHelp loans. But if you still have FFEL loans and you're trying to get PSLF or fail loans that are not owned by Ed, meaning they're not on the payment pause, you still need to take action, take advantage of this. You'll have to consolidate, and we're encouraging folks to do this by April 30th of this year to ensure that their loans are fully in the direct consolidation loan program by the time we run this adjustment in July. Let's go to the next slide. So what's counted under your adjustment? We're counting any month in repayment status, no matter the loan type, no matter whether you made a payment, you could have missed it, it could have been a couple dollars short, no matter the payment plan, any of that, you could have been delinquent. As long as you weren't in default, we will count that time towards repayment. Sounds a lot like the PSLF waiver, right? We're also counting time of repayment prior to consolidation. Normally we don't do that, right? But we're counting time prior to consolidation. Even if you've consolidated multiple times, even if you consolidated a direct loan, even if you consolidated Perkins loans, even if you consolidated a fail loan, we're going to give you credit for that time underlying that consolidation loan. And we're counting some periods of forbearances and deferments. Particularly important is we're counting long-term forbearances, which we define as 36 or more months cumulative or 12 or more months consecutive. So we have a ton of borrowers, right, who you say, I've been in forbearance. They put me in forbearance. I don't know. It was for years and years. It was for months and months. And many of those borrowers could have been on an IDR plan making $0 or low dollar payments. So we're going to count those long-term forbearances, 3 years or more, or 12 months or more consecutive, right? All of that time will then count towards IDR and PSLF if you fall into one of those categories. Let's go to that next slide. And so we're processing this forgiveness automatically as much as possible. It's 939,000 borrowers. Many of them didn't have to do a thing. They were just processed, right? Once they reached 240 months or 20 years or 25 years, 300 months, depending on the type of loan they had, they were able to get their loans forgiven without another step. So for folks who are enrolled in pay as you earn, it was 240 months. So when they reached the equivalent of 240 months of repayment status forgiven, Parent Plus borrowers is 300 months. Grad loans and not on IDR, 300 months, and only undergrad loans, 240 months. And so we're going to continue to process this as regularly until we fully implement that adjustment. Let's go to the next slide. So you can learn more about the payment count adjustment at studentaid.gov/IDR adjustment. But it's a great thing for many people to take advantage of. If you go into your dashboard, if you talk to the borrowers who still have those fellow Perkins loans and they're worried about consolidating, talk to them about the payment count adjustment. Let's go to the next slide. I do want to talk quickly about Fresh Start. Fresh Start is a program that we have for defaulted borrowers. There were 7 million borrowers in default on their federal student loans prior to the payment pause, and many of them had no way out. There was no way for them to get out of that default. So we did something called Fresh Start. This is huge. This is something that's helped 7 million people get back on track with their loans. Many of them only have to take a simple step to take advantage of it. And so it's a one-time program. There are some automatic benefits. So all federally held student loan borrowers in default and fail borrowers in default get restored access to federal student aid. A lot of folks who are in default never finished school, and they couldn't go back to school because they couldn't get any additional aid to go back to school. Now under Fresh Start, these borrowers can. We've stopped collections. We're not garnishing wages or tax returns right now. We've ensured they are now eligible for other government loans like SBA loans or FHA loans. We've done some credit report changes to help them out there, and we're preserving their first day of delinquency so they'll still drop off their credit report in 7 years if it hasn't already. So that's automatically there for most borrowers. The additional benefits, access to income-driven repayment plans like SAVE, access to loan forgiveness programs like PSLF, short-term relief options are available if they take this one extra step and fully opt into Fresh Start. Let's go to the next slide. And they can do that in 3 ways. They can do it by phone, online, or by mail. It's a quick step to say, I want to get out of default. It's like a one-step rehabilitation. They'll be able to, after that, get on an income-based repayment plan, and they'll be able to stay on track with their loans going forward. Many of them probably qualify for a $0 payment right now. They just have to get out of default to get it. They have until the end of September to take advantage of this. And if they do that, they, like all the rest of us, will get credit for that payment pause towards PSLF and IDR. So you can get that whole 3 years towards IDR and PSLF. All they have to do is take advantage of Fresh Start, and they can sign up for an income-based repayment plan. They can get on track and stay on track with their loans. If they don't do that, at the end of September, all of the other benefits that were automatic are going to resume. Let's go to the next slide. So now let's talk about public service loan forgiveness. Which is my favorite thing to talk about. I actually recently, like last week, got my loans forgiven. So I'm very excited. I am a success story. So if you don't believe that people are getting their loan forgiven, I am one of those ones. I'm being added to that 793,000, and I'm very, very excited about that. So public service loan forgiveness is a program that was created by Congress in October 2007. It was said to be simple, meant to be simple, explained simple. And the simple way we talk about it is you have to have 120 qualifying payments on federal direct student loans while working for a qualifying employer when you're applying for PSLF. And at the end of that 120 months of payment and employment, that 10 years, whatever's left over is forgiven and it's not taxable income. It sounded simple, but it wasn't. And there were too many folks who were denied, who were told they didn't have the right loans, who got all the way through 10 years and couldn't get forgiveness. Prior to this administration, 7,000 people had gotten PSLF forgiveness, and we are now at 793,000 and counting. So this is huge. And so we like to say you have to have the right loan with the right repayment with the right job. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to dig into each of those pieces separately. Let's start with the right loan. So for PSLF, and this is when we talked about the direct, the FEL, the Perkins, this is when this is really important, right? You have to have direct loans for PSLF, and that does include consolidation loans, and it does include Parent Plus loans, but they have to be direct. They cannot be FEL loans, they cannot be Perkins loans, and they can't be any other federal or private student loans. But right now, remember, you can still consolidate those FEL or Perkins loans because of the payment count adjustment and still get credit for the underlying loan. But going forward, you have to have direct loans to get PSLF. Let's go to the next slide. So that's the right loan. I'm gonna talk about the right repayment. To count towards the 120, that payment for that month has to satisfy the full amount due, has to be made on a standard plan, and that's the standard 10-year plan or any IDR plan. So that includes SAVE, that includes pay as you earn, that includes ICR, it includes repay, which is now SAVE. Any of those plans count. They can be non-consecutive. I always like to say, get your 120 how you can. For some people, it will take them exactly 10 years. Some people will take them 12. Some people will take them 15. People's lives go on different tracks. So you may not stay in public service in a direct line of 10 years. You may take time off. You may start a family. You may go into a different career. You may go back to school. That's okay. It doesn't have to be 10 years consecutive. You can do it in your own order. It also includes certain periods of forbearance and deferment, even though we weren't having to make payments. So first of all, it definitely includes the 3 years of the payment pause. So everyone who was on the payment pause, if you were working in public service loan forgiveness, certify that time. That's 3 years towards PSLF. That's 3 years towards the 10. You're a third of the way done, even though we didn't have to make a payment. It includes some other periods of forbearance and deferment we're going to talk about next. It doesn't include time on a graduated, extended, or alternative plan. Doesn't include payments where the full amount due for that month was not satisfied. Doesn't include payments made when not required. So if you were in school on deferment. Now keep in mind, this is how PSLF normally works and will work after the count adjustment. Right now, none of this matters. We don't care what plan you used to be on. We don't care if you missed the payment. None of that matters, right? Go ahead and get your certifications in, get your employment forms in, get credit for those months. And then going forward, you want to make sure you're meeting that top half, that you're on a standard plan, standard 10-year plan, or the IDR plan. And you want to meet those requirements. But right now, the past doesn't matter. You can get credit for time that normally doesn't count because of the payment count adjustments. So don't worry if you still fall into one of those categories or you're working with folks who still fall into one of those categories. They can get credit for the past and then be on the right path going forward. Let's go to the next slide. So I want a quick note on Parent Plus loans because I did mention that direct Parent Plus loans are eligible for PSLF. We get a lot of questions about that. They're absolutely eligible for PSLF, and it's based on the parent's employment, not the student's, because it is the parent's loan. The problem with Parent Plus loans is they are not eligible for all income-based repayment plans. Now, when you get the slide deck and you go to that long slide I had at the beginning with that big matrix, you will see where Parent Plus loans are not included in a lot of loans, in a lot of plans. So but you really want to be on an IDR plan for PSLF because the standard plan is 10 years, and that's the automatic plan that most people are on, and it does count towards PSLF. But if you're on a 10-year standard plan, and the PSLF forgiveness is at 10 years, for most folks, there's nothing left to forgive after if they stay on a standard 10-year plan, right? But so if you want to get the most out of PSLF, in general, you want to be on an IDR plan. In order for a Parent Plus borrower to get on an IDR plan, they have to consolidate. And then once they have that direct consolidation loan with that underlying Parent Plus loan, they'll be able to get access to the income contingent repayment plan, ICR. Now, ICR is the least generous of the income-based plans, but it is an income-based plan, and it does qualify for PSLF, and it does put them in a better position for PSLF. But we encourage parent borrowers to use our loan simulator, the one we talked about earlier, put in their information, and then see what their different options are under per payment plans, and make the plan and pick the plan that makes the most sense for them. Let's go to the next slide. So there are also months of deferment and forbearance that count towards PSLF, in addition to the 3 months of the payment pause, cancer treatment deferments, economic hardship deferments, military service, post-active duty student deferment, and a bunch of others. So there are other times where you won't be required to make a payment where that time can still count towards PSLF as well. Next slide. So that's the right job, that's the right loan, the right repayment. Let's talk about the right job. So to be eligible for PSLF, you want to be at a qualifying employer. Now, for you to have qualifying employment, you have to be working full-time, which we define as an average of 30 hours a week. Now, that's even if your employer doesn't consider that full-time for their purposes. For our purposes, as long as you're working an average of 30 hours a week, that counts for PSLF. It includes all government entities. That's federal, state, local, tribal, public schools, public universities, nonprofit universities, all of those count. Well, nonprofit university, because all 501c3 nonprofits count, like the foundations here and the folks and many of the foundations that you work with, right? All 501c3 nonprofits automatically count as well. Some other nonprofits that are not 501c3s also count, but they have to provide a qualifying public service, which we'll talk about next. So it doesn't, wait, go back one, sorry. It doesn't include part-time work if it doesn't add up to full-time. That is not eligible employment. It doesn't include volunteer work. So if you're not being paid, it doesn't count. It doesn't include any for-profit entities, even if they're employing essential workers. And it doesn't include labor unions. Let's go to the next slide. So for the non-501c3s, the nonprofits that are not 501c3s, C4s, C6s, C19s, they have to have a majority of their full-time equivalent employees providing one of these qualifying public services. So that's public health, public education, public library services, services for the elderly, services for people with disabilities. And we have defined each of these on our website in our regulations. So for nonprofits that are not 501c3s, they have to fall into one of these categories. Let's go to the next slide. So we like to say it's about the employer. It's not about the job. We don't ask you what your title is. We don't care how much you get paid. We don't care about any of that. We just want to know who you work for. And is it one of the types of qualifying employers? Is it a federal, state, or local government entity? Is it a 501c3 nonprofit? Is it another nonprofit that provides a qualifying service? That's all we want to know. And do you work full time? You can even have multiple part-time jobs, and as long as they're all with qualifying employers, it can count. So if I work part-time at the Kresge Foundation for 15 hours a week and part-time at another foundation for 15 hours a week, that's 30 hours a week, and they're both eligible employers, and I can get credit for PSLF for that time. So we really just want to know who pays you, and we want to know who is on your W-2, who is on your pay stub, and we learn that by you giving us the EIN. Let's go to the next slide. That's the employer identification number. And so to apply for PSLF, you want to go to studentaid.gov/PSLF. That's our PSLF help tool. The first thing it's going to ask you for is not the name of your employer, nothing like that. It's going to ask you for something called that EIN, employer identification number. That's the number, again, that's on your pay stub or on your W-2, and it is how we identify employers. So you need that EIN, and you'll type that in, and that is how you'll look up your employer in our system. Then you'll be able to electronically sign that form, put in your information, electronically sign that form, send it to your employer to electronically sign, and then you'll be able to submit it electronically. There is a paper form, but we really do encourage you to use use the PSLF help tool and use the ability to sign electronically to get everything processed faster. Let's go to the next slide. And for folks who go through all of this and then they feel like their employer was denied for some reason when it shouldn't have been, or they're not getting credit for all the time they should have, there is something called PSLF reconsideration that folks can use to get their account looked at one more time by FSA folks. Let's go next slide. And just a reminder, you never have to pay for help. We're really encouraging folks, use your student loan servicers, use FSA. We have a really great ombudsman as well. You never have to pay for help. It's already included. Everything is free. You don't have to pay people to help you fill out forms. All of that can be done through your servicers. We made our website easy to use. We're doing everything we can to make stuff as easy to use as possible and to provide things automatically where we can. But you never have to pay for help. There are plenty of folks calling around trying to convince folks to do that. Really want to avoid that. If you get someone, it really sounds like your servicer, but you're just not sure, hang up, go and call your servicer back and just see. But a lot of times people are, if they're ever asking you for money or they're asking you for personal information and they called you, then it's usually a scammer. Let's go to the next slide. These are some links for additional resources. Next slide. And then I think I'm turning it over to Jalakoi to talk about the Save on Student Debt campaign. Thank you. I look forward to questions later.
Perfect. Yes, thank you all so much. Excited to be here with you today. My name is Jalakoi Solomon. I'm our EVP of Campaigns and Partnerships at Civic Nation. And you can go to the next slide. And we are really excited to be in a formal partnership with the Department of Education and with some other key partners, including Unidos US, RISE, Student Debt Crisis Center, Young Invincibles, National Urban League, and the NAACP to ensure that all borrowers have the information that they need to make the best choices for themselves with their loans. So we want to make sure that folks are taking advantage of the SAVE plan if that's the best next step for them, that they're enrolling in PSLF, and that they're finding any other forgiveness options that they are eligible for. And so we have, you can go to the next slide. We have launched our campaign, Save on Student Debt. We launched August 22nd ahead of the start of the return to repayment. And our coalition has grown to over 100 organizations with a reach of over 18 million Americans. We have a really diverse set of folks in the coalition, legal aid and law focus groups, civil rights groups, financial aid and student support groups, nonprofits and community-based organizations, health and welfare, educational institutions, and professional associations. And so, throughout this campaign, we've been doing a lot of work providing training so that folks have those doing the outreach to students and to borrowers have the information that they need. We've been doing a lot of social media work. We provide toolkits and kind of prepackaged content for you to be able to share out to your networks. We've been doing some texting, phone banking, emails, and we've just kicked off some in-person clinics, which I can talk a little bit more about. So you go to the next slide. So we, would love for folks to join our coalition. We really need, more voices spreading the word. As you just saw in Ashley's presentation, some of this stuff can be really complicated. And we want to make sure that we are providing borrowers all the information that they need to really make that best decision for them. And so if you join the Save on Student Debt campaign, you'll be added to an email list that Civic Nation facilitates. We have monthly calls where we hear directly from the Department of Education, from the White House, from other partners about the work that they're doing and being able to give you all next steps and a space to ask questions as you are starting to do this work with others in your community. And you'll be invited to participate in regular outreach and mobilization events. So if you go to our next slide, an example of that is we did a large week of action as we started this campaign, and we had, again, our initial 100 organizations over 49 states. We, during that time, were able to do 93 events, including workshops, webinars, and trainings around the SAVE plan. We had over 3,000 colleges and universities were engaged through ACE and NASFA. We had over 1,900 borrowers attended FSA's 101 webinar. And during that time, we were able to reach over 18 million borrowers with more information about the SAVE plan. Also, since we've launched this campaign, we, post our week of action, we have been really kind of focused on 3 key areas. One, ensuring that all of those doing outreach have the information that they need to be able to help borrowers. And so to date, we've held over 25 kind of tailored trainings to key audiences. So we've focused on educators and union members. So NEA and AFT host workshops and webinars for their members. Legal aid and professional networks. So Student Debt Crisis Center has hosted a ton of webinars and sessions for state legislative staff, immigration attorneys network, SAG-AFTRA, and many others, focusing on employers. So ensuring that employers understand their role as their role in the process of PSLF and supporting their employees as they are returning to repayment. And so we did a webinar with SHRM and had over 300 employers on to give them the information that they needed to support borrowers. And then, of course, we're supporting borrowers directly. So FSA continues to have large webinars like these where they are able to speak directly to those who have student loans and provide them the information that they need. We're also kind of second piece is we're engaging borrowers online. And so we've launched some influencer work, done some influencer briefings to ensure that those that have networks to actually reach people where they are have the information that they need to be able to be providing accurate information online, as we know that lots of misinformation is rampant. And so Unidos has been doing some really great work. Yeah, Invincibles does a regular like Twitter Tuesdays chat that partners from the coalition join in to really amplify and spread the word. And so across our work of engaging borrowers online, have been able to connect with millions of borrowers to spread information. And then we are kicking off a kind of new series of work as in what we're calling our in-person student loan clinics. And so on January 21st, we just held our first in-person clinic with 1,000 women strong in DC. And it was a really, amazing event, and we are planning to continue to put more of these on and to scale these. We had over 35 borrowers in attendance. With an average age of 50 to 65. So really able to, target a key community of folks who have for years been trying to figure out how to best navigate their loans. We were able to enroll 4 of those folks in SAVE, who to get together are going to save over $26,000 a year in their monthly payments. And we helped 13 borrowers kind of get on their path to over $1 million in discharge or loan forgiveness. So ensuring that folks understood how to apply for disability discharge, how to certify for public service loan forgiveness, what the forgiveness benefits in the SAVE plan look like. And so really able to like print out paperwork, fill it out with them in person, make sure that they were on the right path to get that forgiveness. And so we're doing our next clinic on March 9th in Atlanta, and we'll drop the link for that, and would love your support in spreading the word to those that you engage with in that area. And then we are in the process of planning, 5 to 10 more of these over the next couple months, and we'll of course spread the word when we lock in those details. So I think this is my last slide. So the things we'd love for folks to do today is to join the coalition. So saveonstudentdebt.org/join. We'll drop that link in the chat. We'd love your support in spreading the word about the Atlanta clinic. And then just a reminder, I'm not sure if Ashley mentioned it, but there is another webinar for borrowers on February 22nd, so next week. So we will drop that link as well. And please spread that to those in your community as well.
Well, thank you, Ashley and Jalakoi, for all that information. It's a lot to take in, but it's a lot of great information. It's going to really help a lot of people. I guess my first question that's come up through the Q&A is, I wonder if you could remind us again, where can people easily see on the federal student loan website, student aid website, if SAVE is the right plan for them? Can we look on our account to see if we are eligible for that early cancellation?
So that's an interesting question. So first, to see if SAVE is right for you, you want to use our loan simulator, and then you can go through that process, and we'll tell you, give you the best plan or strategy for you based on the inputs that you put in. To determine if you're eligible for SAVE early forgiveness is a little bit different because it's going to be based on your original principal balance. So yes, you can find this out because you'll be able to go to studentaid.gov, go to your dashboard, and click on each loan individually, and you can see the original principal balance, but that's a little bit trickier. But we will be sending emails soon to many of the borrowers who would be eligible for this if they just took a couple steps to sign up for SAVE. But it's a little bit difficult, especially if you have consolidation loans and things like that. But you can see your original principal balances on your dashboard, but you have to look at each individual loan.
Great, thank you. And can borrowers seeking PSLF get on SAVE? Can you do both programs?
Absolutely. They do not work in conflict. They work together. SAVE is an IDR plan, and all IDR plans are plans that are eligible for PSLF credit. So SAVE is an IDR plan. PSLF is a forgiveness program, and you can absolutely do both.
Is there a paper application for SAVE for incarcerated borrowers?
Yes, it is. There's a paper application for all borrowers. And I think Caitlin can drop that link in the chat.
Great, thank you. And this is a question more for Jalakoi. How can philanthropy be of help to the campaign?
Well, we kind of always think of how we could use support in three key buckets. So kind of reach, resources, and expertise. And so we love working with philanthropy on expertise. If you all have knowledge about the student loan landscape, about how we can, be most effectively reaching folks, we want to partner with you to think about the best ways to reach folks and actually see an impact. In terms of reach, an example just like this, we are doing this webinar with the Kresge team and being able to speak directly to grantees and to those of you who are boots on the ground doing the work, engaging with your communities, being able to get on and share information and ensure that more folks have the resources they need to do outreach. And then, of course, resources, including financial resources, are extremely helpful for us to be able to keep doing great work like the clinics that we are kicking off and the work that we are doing.
Thank you. Karen has a question. If a SAVE payment does not cover full interest, balance of interest is waived. How often will the waived interest amount be itemized or applied on the servicer's pages or studentaid.gov? Monthly?
So you might not see it itemized, right? You will not, unfortunately, you will not always be able to easily see it. But what you will see is that your balance is not growing your overall balance is not growing from month to month. So there's unfortunately not a place where it will say, this much interest was paid for this month, right? But you will see that your overall balance doesn't grow.
Okay. Logan asks, how does IDR work if you have a cosigner on your loan?
So could be two things. If you have a cosigner, you might have a private student loan. If you have a private student loan, that only federal student loans are eligible for our federal programs, including IDR. Or you could mean that you might have one of our joint consolidation loans, or you might have had very few loans had to get a cosigner. Maybe you had to do it for like a grad plus loan. But for most folks, if it was a cosigner and it is a federal student loan, that does not impact you. Now, if you are a married borrower and filing jointly, you will have to include your spouse's income and any debt they have. But if you are filing separately, you don't have to include your spouse's income to calculate your monthly payment.
Okay, thank you. This is a question that asks, to clarify, if I work as a public servant, and that presumably means a government agency or a 501c3, and my loans were in forbearance and or deferment for a period of time, do those months count towards the monthly count for forgiveness?
Only if it falls into one of those categories we talked about, right? If it's that long-term forbearance or some of the forbearances that we went through or that COVID forbearance. So it really just depends because there's a lot of different types of forbearance. So you would have to look at your own individual situation.
Okay. And I wonder if you could talk about the nonprofit versus private status of an employer. How can a borrower look up which employers qualify for PSLF? How can employers make sure they are listed as eligible if they are not in the FSA database?
Great question. So we have a PSLF employer help tool. I think Caitlin dropped in the chat, and I think she dropped it in again. You still need that EIN, that employer identification number, and you can put it into our system, and you'll see if your employer is already showing up as approved or maybe undetermined, meaning we don't know yet whether it's whether it's eligible or not, or if it's saying ineligible. And if you see something on there that you think is wrong, you can reach out to our team and say, we want to get this updated. You can do it either through the reconsideration process or through our ombudsman's office. And you can submit information supporting the fact that your organization falls into one of our categories. It's a government entity or a 501c3 or another type of nonprofit that provides a qualifying service.
And just out of curiosity, this actually happened to me. If my former employer was a 501c3, but then it ended up going bankrupt or closing, how does that affect my application?
That happens a lot. We know nonprofits close, right? So if you absolutely cannot get a signature, the best way is to get a signature. But if you absolutely can't, you can submit tax returns or old pay stubs, which you do have to show something that shows us that you were employed by that qualifying employer. And so we really encourage folks to submit a PSLF form every year or every time they change jobs, so that way they can avoid this as much as possible.
Great, thank you. And how do we see the number of qualifying payments for PSLF that are on file with studentaid.gov?
So you can see them right now. The PSLF servicer is MOHELA. So if you are already in PSLF, you'll be able to see your account on the MOHELA website. Quick fact, if your servicer is not currently MOHELA or your servicer was never Fed loan servicing because out of the market, you probably haven't enrolled in PSLF. So you will not be able to see your qualifying payments until you submit a PSLF form. But if you're in PSLF, you can also see it on your studentaid.gov dashboard. Again, dashboard is a great place to go for tons of information, and it will tell you next to your loan how many on your for each individual loan, it'll tell you how much credit you have towards PSLF there as well.
I have to say the dashboard just seems like a great solution, because otherwise you seem you feel lost, right? That's terrific. You said earlier that AmeriCorps forbearance counts towards PSLF. Is the SAVE plan better than the forbearance for AmeriCorps members?
It really just depends. I mean, both will count towards AmeriCorps forbearance time will count towards PSLF under our new rules. SAVE, if you're in AmeriCorps, you probably also would qualify for a $0 payment for most folks. So either or would count, unless there's a reason why your SAVE payment would be higher than $0. Then I would use AmeriCorps forbearance, but both count towards PSLF. So it's up to you.
Here's a question. Melissa asked, I have an old consolidated FFBL loan and was told I could not put that in SAVE. So does this mean I need to consolidate the consolidated loan into direct consolidated loan? And then I think I may be skipping the consolidated here. But, so does this mean that I need to consolidate the consolidated loan into direct consolidated loan, and then that can be signed up for SAVE?
Yes, but if you only have one consolidated FFEL loan, you have to in order to consolidate into a direct loan, it has to be for PSLF purposes. So you would need to mark that on the consolidation application. But then, yes, you would be able to sign up for SAVE.
And then Tabby asks, does loan consolidation disqualify borrowers from other loan forgiveness opportunities?
No, especially right now, because you're still getting credit for the time underlying, so it will not harm you, especially if you consolidate before the account adjustment. The things that consolidation does is if you consolidate after the account adjustment, you could get a weighted average or no credit if it's a FFEL loan after the account adjustment, or your interest rate could change when you consolidate. But right now, the pros to consolidation really outweigh any cons.
So Jacqueline asks, and you may have answered this already, but maybe this is a special circumstance. This is not about a bankruptcy or a closure. In this case, my previous employer won't sign the PSLF form. What next steps should I take? So it's not that there's no one there to answer the phone. They're not willing to do their share.
Yeah, if they absolutely won't sign it, you're kind of in that same bucket. So there's a place on the help tool and on the paper app where you can note that you can't get a signature, and you would do the same thing, submit a W-2 or pay stubs.
And for the one-time account adjustment, do you have to apply somehow, or just make sure you consolidate and then the adjustment will take place automatically?
Yep, it's automatic for most people. If you're already have an ed held loan, you're good to go. You don't have to do anything. Only folks who need to take steps are people who still have FFEL loans, even if they have ed-held FFEL, meaning you have a FFEL loan, but the department owns it and you're trying to get PSLF, you still need to consolidate. Other folks who might think about consolidating, even if they have all direct loans, or people who have some direct loans that have like 20 years worth of payments and some that have 10 years worth of payments. And if you consolidate them all together, that entire consolidation loan for all of it will get the 20 years. And so, but most people know they don't have to do a thing. Just wait and it will all happen for them.
Thank you. And this question was, I had loans in forbearance while I did 2 years of AmeriCorps. Those years are not currently being counted towards my PSLF. Only my last 7 years of nonprofit employment are. To get those years counted towards PSLF, do I need to add them to my PSLF tracker application?
For AmeriCorps forbearance?
Yeah.
Yeah, so even if you sign up for an AmeriCorps forbearance, that's not the same as submitting a PSLF form for your service, right? So for everything, you still have to submit a form saying your employer signed by that employer, signed by you for that time. So for every period of time you want credit for, there has to be a corresponding PSLF form as well.
Do you have to be employed at a nonprofit at the time of forgiveness if you were employed during the 120 qualifying payments? So let's say I was a teacher for 120 payments and now I'm running a big company.
Yes. So you had to have been employed with a qualifying employer at the time of the 120th payment.
Okay. And while I understand that you are discouraging borrowers from paying for student loan assistance, do you know of free services if people need help? Customer service is nearly impossible to get through.
Do I know of people? Yes. So if you absolutely need help, the Save on Student Debt members in the campaign, there's a lot of folks who will provide help, and there's a lot of clinics. I think Jalakoi went through a bunch of those. We're going to do some in-person ones. If you can't get help from your servicer or through the FSA call centers, or you have an issue, you can go through our ombudsman office. But a lot of stuff you can do right on studentaid.gov or with your servicer, or there are organizations that we are working with that are part of Save on Student Debt campaign that are not charging you for help, right? Because you never have to pay for help.
Okay. And this question was, I'm still in school, currently in my last class. My job I've been on for 7 years qualifies for PSLF. When will my years of service begin?
So if you're in school and you're not technically in repayment, that time doesn't count. Now, if you were like if you're in grad school and you went to undergrad before and you had loans and you were in repayment, important thing to note for people who are thinking about grad school or currently in grad school, you can opt out of that in-school deferment if you've previously been in repayment. You don't have to go into deferment because a lot of folks work while they're in grad school and could still be getting credit. So you could opt out of that. But if you've never entered repayment and you're still in school and then you're going to have your grace period, then your time in repayment would start when you finish school and when your grace period was over. So then you would have to have that time in repayment and that employment.
Okay.
Going forward.
And what if someone has a FFEL loan, but we're told they lost insurance, so can't consolidate? Any options for them?
Yeah, unfortunately, if you have a FFEL loan that permanently lost insurance, if it's permanently lost insurance, you unfortunately have you no longer have a federal student loan, you have a private loan. And so this will be based on the terms of your promissory note or your agreement with that lender.
Okay. And this, I think, is probably our last question, or second to last if it's a fast one. But there was a guidance to beware of scams. But as an employer, we've gotten proposals from third-party companies to help our staff navigate the student loan process. I assume these are not scams, but curious whether the guidance still applies to beware of working with third parties. So these might be I know of at least one organization that provides guidance for employees about their eligibility for student loan repayments and things like that as a staff benefit for a company.
So that is work that your employer is doing. We're talking about the folks who call you, you never have to pay for help. We don't comment on employee benefits or things like that your employer is working with a company for, but on our end, you never have to pay for help, and you have servicers and call centers and ombudsman's office that can help you.
And Ashley, you mentioned a lot of circumstances this year where there are going to be simplified rules and processes that you could take advantage of. Is there a place that I could go as an employer or as a student loan holder, where I could see what that list is, when the deadlines are, and what I need to do to qualify for the special windows that have been opened this year.
There's not one central place. Really, the main ones to be worried about right now are the payment count adjustment and fresh start if you're in default. Everything else, save isn't going anywhere. PSLF isn't going anywhere. The IDR plans aren't going anywhere. But the ones you really want to be worried about is if you still have those older loans, you want to think about how you benefit from the payment count adjustment or trying to get PSLF. And if you're in default, you want to take advantage of fresh start.
Well, thank you so much. Before we conclude today's webinar, I want to remind everybody that registered for this webinar that you will receive a follow-up link for the recording of the webinar. You may also want to copy some of the links placed in the chat for further reference. I also have several people I'd like to thank. First, we are so grateful to the U.S. Department of Education, especially Secretary Cardona, Ashley Harrington, Caitlin Vitez, and for making this webinar possible. We couldn't have done it without you. Your expertise and encyclopedic knowledge of the student loan process is really just amazing. Second, I'd like to thank the entire Civic Nation team, Jalakoi Solomon and Kyle Learman in particular, for their efforts in the Save on Student Debt campaign. Third, I want to thank my wonderful Kresge team, Ashley Johnson, Caroline Altman-Smith, Tracy Pearson, and Jocelyn Cisneros for everything they have done to make this happen today. And finally, thanks to all of you who took time to participate in this webinar. On behalf of the staff and trustees of the Kresge Foundation, we encourage you to share what you've learned today with your colleagues and friends. Thank you.